The air in the small town of Ridgemont was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and secrets. It was a place where the past and present seemed to intertwine, where every corner held a memory, and every face told a story. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your business. Gossip spread like wildfire, and privacy was a luxury few could afford. The townsfolk prided themselves on their close-knit community, but beneath the surface, there were whispers of things best left unsaid. But behind the picket fences and well-manicured lawns, something dark was brewing. The perfect facades hid imperfect lives, and the shadows of secrets loomed large. The town's picturesque appearance was a mask, concealing the turmoil that lay beneath. At the heart of it all was a forbidden love, a dangerous liaison between a young, impressionable student named Jessica and her charismatic English teacher, Mr. Anderson. Their relationship was a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode and shatter the fragile peace of Ridgemont. Jessica, with her long, flowing hair and piercing blue eyes, was the picture of youthful innocence. She was a dreamer, lost in her own world of books and fantasies, yearning for something more than the mundane life Ridgemont offered. Mr. Anderson, with his rugged good looks and easy charm, was everything a teenage girl thought she ever wanted. He was a beacon of knowledge and sophistication, a stark contrast to the boys her age. His presence was magnetic, drawing her in with every word he spoke. Their paths crossed in the hallowed halls of Ridgemont High, a place meant for learning and growth. The school was a microcosm of the town, with its own set of rules and hierarchies. It was here that their story began, amidst the lockers and classrooms, where dreams were nurtured and hearts were broken. Jessica, starved for attention and affection at home, found solace in Mr. Anderson's classroom. Her parents, caught up in their own lives, failed to see the loneliness that consumed her. She was a bright student, but her brilliance often went unnoticed. He saw a spark in her, a thirst for knowledge that he felt compelled to quench. He admired her intellect and her passion for literature. Their conversations transcended the boundaries of teacher and student, delving into the realms of philosophy and dreams. What began as innocent after-school tutoring sessions soon blossomed into something more dangerous. The lines between right and wrong blurred, and their connection deepened. They found themselves drawn to each other, unable to resist the pull of their forbidden attraction. Stolen glances turned into lingering touches. Each moment they spent together was charged with unspoken emotions, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Their hearts raced with the thrill of the forbidden, and they revelled in the secrecy of their affair. Late-night study sessions became the backdrop for whispered secrets and forbidden kisses. The classroom, once a place of learning, transformed into a sanctuary for their love. They spoke in hushed tones, their words laced with longing and desire. They were playing with fire, and neither one seemed to care. The world outside ceased to exist when they were together. They were consumed by their passion, oblivious to the consequences that loomed on the horizon. Their love was a dangerous game, and they were willing to risk everything for it. The rumors started subtly, like whispers carried on the wind. Students noticed the way Mr. Anderson lingered a little too long at Jessica's desk, how his eyes seemed to follow her every move. There were hushed conversations in the hallways, knowing glances exchanged between classmates. Some dismissed it as harmless flirting, a bit of inappropriate but ultimately harmless attention. Others weren't so sure, sensing something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Jessica's friends noticed a change in her too. She was withdrawn, secretive, her mind always seemingly elsewhere. Her grades, once exemplary, began to slip, and she no longer seemed interested in the things that used to bring her joy. When confronted, Jessica would brush off their concerns, attributing her behavior to stress or lack of sleep. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was living a double life, one consumed by the intoxicating thrill of her secret affair. As the weeks morphed into months, the weight of their secret began to crush them both. Mr. Anderson, once confident and self-assured, became increasingly paranoid. He knew the consequences if their affair were ever exposed. His career, his reputation, his entire life would be ruined. The fear gnawed at him, turning him into a shell of his former self. Jessica, too, felt the pressure mounting. The thrill of the forbidden had worn off, replaced by a growing sense of unease. She loved Mr. Anderson, or at least she believed she did. But the reality of their situation was beginning to dawn on her. He was her teacher, she his student. There was an imbalance of power, a fundamental wrongness to their relationship that she could no longer ignore. Cracks started to appear in their once unbreakable bond. Arguments became more frequent, fueled by jealousy, insecurity, and the constant fear of being discovered. Looking back, it's often easier to see the signs that were missed in the moment. There were red flags, warning signs that everyone seemed to miss or chose to ignore. These signs were subtle at first, almost like whispers in the wind. But they grew louder and more insistent as time went on. Jessica's friends had tried to talk to her, their concern evident in their voices and their eyes. They saw the changes in her behavior, the way she seemed to withdraw from them, and they knew something was wrong. They tried to make her see the danger she was in, to help her understand that the path she was on was fraught with peril. They offered their support, their shoulders to cry on, and their advice, but she had pushed them away, blinded by her infatuation. Jessica was so enamored with Mr. Anderson that she couldn't see the reality of the situation. She ignored the warnings, convinced that her feelings were genuine and reciprocated. Teachers had noticed Mr. Anderson's inappropriate behavior, the way he seemed to pay extra attention to Jessica, the lingering looks, the private conversations. They whispered among themselves, sharing their concerns in hushed tones. But they had been reluctant to get involved, fearing for their jobs and the potential backlash. They didn't want to cause a scandal, to be the ones to bring down a respected colleague. The school staff held tense meetings, discussing the rumors and the possible consequences. They weighed their options, but in the end, they chose to remain silent, hoping the situation would resolve itself. And Jessica's parents, consumed by their own problems, were oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath their own roof. They were too wrapped up in their own lives to notice the changes in their daughter, the signs that something was terribly wrong. Jessica felt isolated at home, her cries for help going unheard. The chaos of her family life only added to her sense of confusion and despair. The truth was, no one wanted to believe it. The community was in denial, unwilling to accept that something so sordid could happen in their midst. They turned a blind eye, preferring to believe in the facade of normalcy. Mr. Anderson was a respected member of the community, a pillar of the very school where he taught. He was seen as a mentor, a guide, someone who could do no wrong. He was always there, at every school event, every parent-teacher meeting, always with a smile and a kind word. It was unthinkable that he could be involved in something so scandalous. Jessica was an honor student, a bright and promising young woman with her whole life ahead of her. She was the pride of her family, the hope of her community. She worked hard, studied late into the night, and dreamed of a future filled with possibilities. The idea that she could be involved in such a sordid affair was unthinkable. The scandalous text messages, the secretive whispers, they all pointed to a reality that no one wanted to face. It was an abomination that shattered the very fabric of their small town. The town was in shock. The trust they had placed in Mr. Anderson shattered like glass. The revelation was a blow to their collective psyche, a wound that would take a long time to heal. The tension reached a fever pitch one fateful summer night. The air was thick with an almost palpable sense of foreboding, as if the very atmosphere knew that something terrible was about to unfold. Jessica, torn between her feelings for Mr. Anderson and the growing realization that their relationship was toxic and unsustainable, decided to end things. She had spent countless sleepless nights wrestling with her emotions, trying to find the courage to break free from the chains that bound her to him. She met him at their usual spot, a secluded clearing in the woods just beyond the edge of town. This place, once a sanctuary for their secret meetings, now felt like a prison, its shadows closing in on her. She had rehearsed the words 1,000 times in her head, but as she looked into Mr. Anderson's eyes, she saw a darkness she had never noticed before. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the true nature of the man she thought she knew. He pleaded with her, begged her to reconsider, his voice a mixture of desperation and rage. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now burned with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. He couldn't live without her, he said, his words slurred and heavy with unspoken threats. The alcohol on his breath was unmistakable, a testament to the depths of his despair and the volatility of his emotions. Jessica stood her ground, her voice trembling but resolute. She knew that this was her only chance to escape the toxic cycle they had been trapped in for so long. It was over, she told him, and he needed to accept that. Her words were like a final, irrevocable decree, echoing through the stillness of the night. As she turned to leave, Mr. Anderson snapped. The transformation was instantaneous, his desperation morphing into a terrifying rage. He grabbed her by the arm, his grip like a vice. The pain shot through her, but she refused to let it show, determined not to give him the satisfaction. A struggle ensued, their shadows twisting and contorting in the moonlight. Then, the unthinkable happened. In the chaos, a sharp, sudden movement, a flash of something metallic, and Jessica felt a searing pain. She gasped, her vision blurring as she stumbled backward. The world seemed to slow down, every sound amplified, every sensation heightened. She could hear the rustling of the leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the frantic beating of her own heart. As she fell to the ground, her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, memories of happier times, regrets, and the overwhelming realization that this might be the end. Mr. Anderson stood over her, his face a mask of horror and disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend what he had just done. The night, once filled with tension, now hung heavy with the weight of tragedy.